All right, let's take a look at probably the most useful version of a loop in the JavaScript universe. This is called a forEach loop. And because we tend to camel case things in JavaScript, it looks like this: forEach, lowercase f, capital E. We'll get into the syntax of this in just a second. So forEach loops are relatively new to JavaScript. Other languages have had these for ages. JavaScript has only recently got this in the last few years, and it has been a major improvement to the JavaScript ecosystem. So forEach is basically a shortcut for the for loop that looks something along these lines. So you've got variable is equal to 0, do something for the length of an array, and automatically increment. What this is going to do instead is just say, hey, you have a list of names, you have an array of names, there's 5 of them in there, I'm just gonna loop through each one for you. So let's give this an example here. Var names is equal to an array of Caleb, Nathan, Zephyr, and Henry. I almost actually wrote the word and. And so previously how we would have to loop through these is kind of actually gross. We'd have to do for var I is equal to 0, I is less than or equal to, no, just less than, names.length, I++, and then we could console.log names I. And this will give us all of them. So let's go ahead and refresh our page, and we'll see that this works. But when you're actually writing this, this looks a little too much. And there's an easier way to do this. The easier way to do this is through a forEach loop. So let's go ahead and type names.forEach. And this is going to take a function, and this function has 2 parameters in it. It has the name and the index. And so the name is going to be whatever the value is in here. So it might not actually be called name. You can rename these if you like. But because these are names, I'm going to call this names. And this is going to be the loop iteration. So console.log, whatever the index is, whatever the name is. And this already just looks a lot easier. Let's go ahead and refresh this page. We have Caleb, Nathan, Zephyr, and Henry. Just like that. Nice and easy the way it should be. No more dealing with our own iterators and our iterator integer over and over and over again. We don't have to increment it. We don't even have to worry about it. It's just going to say, hey, there's 4 items in here. Let's loop through this 4 times. Now it's still important to know both, because this is the older way of doing it. You're going to see this everywhere for backwards compatibility. Moving forward in JavaScript from here on out, you're going to see a lot of forEach loops. Now, where does this actually become useful? Well, what if we wanted to get all of the inner text from every single li? So we've got an li in here. So li.js text, and I don't know, item 1. Let's just do this over and over and over again. Okay, so I just made 17 list items, all with the same class. And I want to select all of these and loop through them and get the text in here. How am I going to do that? Let's go ahead, comment this out. And let's use a query selector all. So let's do var lis is equal to documents dot query selector all. And we want to select all the JS text elements, or rather all the list items with a class of JS text. Now let's loop through these. So we've got lis.forEach. forEach takes a function. And this is going to be whatever is in here. So this is going to be our particular node, and then it's going to give us our index. Now what happens if we just did console.log, not quite, console.log node.innerText. Let's go ahead and refresh our page. And sure enough, it all shows up in our JavaScript. So we have managed to loop through 17 list items and get the text of each one in 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of code. And this also allows us to enable the query selector all. We haven't really been able to use this too much because up until this point, well, we knew about lists or arrays, but we didn't really know how to loop through them. Now we can. You can also use the old school loop way if you wanted to do it that way, but this is just so much cleaner. Now, just for funsies, let's go ahead and actually change the inner text of this node. So let's go node.innerText, and just to make this ultra clear, where we got node from was if I do this, type in lis, this gives me a node list down here. And each one of these is like a query selector, a regular query selector. And so we just renamed the regular query selector to basically have a variable name. We just called it node. And in there, we have access to all of these different things. And we just said, hey, grab that node and then get the inner text. So let's go ahead and change this inner text to something different. This inner text is going to be index multiplied by 12, whatever that's going to be. And let's try this. Let's add some brackets around there and let's concatenate a string. Let's see if this is going to work the way we intended to work. So this should say a number is the number. And sure enough, there it is. 0 multiplied by 12 is 0. 1 times 12 is 12. 16 times 12 is 192. And so now basically, again, with just 4 lines of code, you can ignore the comment in there, that's not necessary anymore. With 4 lines of code, we were able to loop through every single item in here and change it to be whatever we wanted it to be. Now let's go ahead and do one more thing. Let's say we actually want to cut this list down. This is going to be fun. Let's say we want to cut this list down to just 10 items, the first 10 items. So what we're going to say here is if the index is equal to 10, nope, that's going to be exactly 10. If it's greater than or equal to 10, let's go ahead and remove this node. Let's just remove it from the document object model entirely. And then let's also continue. And so this is only ever going to run on the 10th iteration or higher, and this is only ever going to run, assuming that continue is never executed, it's going to run from 0 up until the number 10. But we're not necessarily in a loop here. This is a function that's being executed from each particular item in a list or in an array. How are we going to continue? We can't continue because continue is a keyword that is reserved for loops exclusively. We are inside of a function. So what we can do is return false. And I would like you to also experiment with returning true and just returning in general. But let's go ahead and return false. And when I refresh the page, we can see here 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have 10 items in there in total, and it got rid of all the other ones. Let's go ahead and actually comment this out so that we can see these indexes properly. Item 1 through 10 is available. We got rid of 11 through 17. So that is forEach loops in a nutshell. It's really, really nice because now we can actually very, very easily grab multiple elements from our page and loop through them and do something with it. Whatever that something is entirely up to you. But now you know how to work with for loops, while loops, and forEach loops. I would really appreciate it if you could take a few minutes and just recreate the example that I created in this video, just so you get a little hands-on experience with the .forEach notation with a callback function in here. These are going to be incredibly useful going forward. It allows you to basically execute one chunk of code over and over and over and over again without having to copy and paste over and over and over and over again. So go ahead and give that a shot, and when you're ready and you're feeling confident, let's head on over to the next video.